G'day everyone, John here. Welcome back to the Wheels YouTube channel, where we're today featuring another small SUV. This time, the facelifted Kia Seltos, which I happen to think is one of the most successful midlife refreshes we've seen, at least of this year, especially in range-topping GT line, finished in its two-tone Pluton blue with black roof. I think it looks really sharp, especially with those LED light signatures, though you only get those on the range-topping GT line. Now, before I get into too much detail, let me know what you think of the new Seltos in the comments section down below. And in today's video, we're going to take a look at the design, speak about the competitors for this car, talk about its new powertrain, which is a big deal because it replaces that dithering dual clutch that was here before. And then of course, we're going to take it out for a drive, check out its practicality, and see what the new Seltos is all about. To the looks of the new Seltos. Let's start with the top. The grille is wider, taller, and there's more black on it. Below that, we've also got a new skid plate, which really adds to the tough kind of look of this Seltos small SUV. Of course, you're not going to be able to take it very far off-road, but it really does feed into the character of an SUV like this and differentiates it from rivals like the Mazda CX-30, which is going for more of a sort of coupe theme. We've also got these lovely LED lighting details with these sort of claw marks here down on the side. I think the GT line looks really handsome. Finally, we come down the sides, and the Seltos range in general has all new alloy wheel designs, and there are no more steel wheels on the base car, and that certainly helps justify the $2,200 to $2,600 premium that the facelifted Seltos charges over the pre-facelift model in my books. But let me know what you think down below. The Seltos range spans 6 variants and $31,690 to $47,690 drive away. The Seltos compares favourably with rivals on price. This GT line all-wheel drive is $47,690 drive away, a Mazda CX-30 G25 Astina will be around 50 grand on the road, a Corolla Cross Atmos all-wheel drive hybrid is 3 grand more, and remember, Kia quotes drive away prices for Seltos, so rivals may vary state by state. Inside the cabin of the Kia Seltos, and things have changed quite a lot with this facelift. But before I get into it, I'll just talk a little bit about why we're in the GT line, which historically you would have thought isn't going to be Kia's volume variant. But actually, Kia's projecting this is going to take 25% of sales in Australia over the next 12 months, in which they hope to sell around 10,000 of these small SUVs. Now, that's been a big change since the latest generation of Cerato. Kia's really worked on richening their mix of models, and that's great to see. But there are still some things in this GT line at over $47,500 drive away that feel a little bit cheap, so I'm going to start with those. Mainly it comes down to interior plastics. Up here on the doors, it's all scratchy and not that nice to touch, and up here on the dashboard, it's the same thing. But to be honest, that's pretty much where the criticisms in that vein end, because actually the high traffic touch points are really high quality. This steering wheel that you get on the GT line with the slightly flattened bottom has really nice perforations, and it's finished in leather, as is the steering wheel in the Sport and the Sport Plus. You also have a nice comfortable armrest here in this GT line and a sort of satin sheen door handle here, which feels nice to open and interact with as the driver. Next, let's move on to the technology, which is really a place where the Seltos has upgraded. We've now got a pair of 10.25 inch screens, one being touchscreen for the infotainment, and it seamlessly integrates with the 10.25 inch digital driver's display. The GT line really pulls it off well, but to be fair, the Sport and the Sport Plus also get this package, and that means on all 3 variants, you get Kia's connected services thrown in for 7 years, which is a really nice touch, especially since that Corolla Cross that you came with me to check out a couple of weeks back doesn't get it for 7 years. You only get connected services in the Toyota for 1 year, and then you have to pay about $23.50 per month to get that stuff ongoing on top of your ownership costs already, which kind of stings a bit. So it's really great to see that Kia has included that for a good 7-year span. It's hooked up in this GT line to a nice 8-speaker Bose stereo, which has these really cool intricate speaker grills as it did before. They look cool, and it adds to the sharpness of this car. As for practicalities, we've got 2 cup holders, plenty of storage space here for phones and odds and ends. You've got wireless charging on this range-topping GT line, and you've also got a USB-A and a USB-C fast charging port, as well as a space for a 12-volt socket. The door bins are still not that great on the Seltos, but you do get a nice amount of covered storage below this comfortable armrest. And finally, while we're on the subject of this center console, I'll just talk about the new button mapping, because the buttons are now gone from being around the touchscreen, which actually gives a really nice space to rest your hand as you interact with the touchscreen. The shortcut buttons still exist, they're down here. You've got a physical tune and volume knob, and you've also got physical aircon controls. All great things to see Kia integrating high tech with the low tech stuff that makes it really easy to interact with this cabin. Finally, we come to the seating. Now, the Seltos has a really high seating position here in this range-topping GT line. You do also get a high seating position across the range. The GT line is differentiated by these faux leather seats with heating and cooling, electric adjustment, and two-way memory position for the driver. All great stuff, but to be honest, for me, I actually was really quite a big fan of the Sport Plus's seats. They're only manual adjustable and the passenger doesn't get any height adjust, but their high quality feeling cloth means that it doesn't get quite so hot in summer, meaning you don't need the heating and cooling that you get on the vinyl seats of the range-topping GT line, and you save about $4,000. So I think my sweet spot at the range may very well be the Sport Plus, but still the GT line does a very convincing job of its front cabin. Here in the rear of the Kia Seltos, this small SUV continues to be a really practical choice. If you want to downsize from a mid-size SUV, then this thing has space for 4 easily, and you can even fit 5 across. This middle seat is nice and broad. There's also a really good amount of headroom under this roof, even though that this one isn't fitted with the sunroof that you get in tandem with the GT line. Without the two-tone option, for some reason you can't get a two-tone with a sunroof. That's just Kia's global policy, which is a bit of a shame, but it is good for headroom, which for me at 188 centimeters is really decent, as is legroom behind my own driving position, and tow room is really good owing to the front seat being set nice and high. That said, I still have a good stadium view out over the 2 front passengers, so I wouldn't get sick on a road trip. The other thing that Kia has done, which is really great to see, they've listened to feedback, is adding air vents across the entire Seltos range. That means from base model S, if you want to use that as a rideshare car or for your family, you're going to have 2 adjustable air vents in the rear, and that makes a really big difference in a country that gets as hot as Australia does in summer. There's also this interesting little pocket here and 2 USB-C fast charging ports to keep devices really nice and charged. So even though this is a small SUV, which you may have generally thought of as one for couples and the occasional people in the back, this car is really quite usable for a family. This has always been one of the Seltos' best features, and it still is pretty much the best in the small SUV class, even in range-topping GT line form, where it falls to 433 litres of cargo space because it gets a full-sized spare tyre under the boot. That's huge in Australia and not something offered by all competitors. For example, the Toyota Corolla Cross in all-wheel drive hybrid form does not have a full-size spare tyre. And the base model Seltos S offers even more boot space because it doesn't have a full-size spare tyre under the boot floor, so it climbs to 468 litres of cargo space. I'll flash up a table right now showing how the Seltos stacks up against other small SUV rivals. In the Seltos, that new engine is also hooked up to a more conventional 8-speed torque converter automatic from ASIN due to feedback from buyers and media. We're going to see how that stacks up out on the road compared to the old dual clutch right now. The updated Kia Seltos out on the road is a whole lot smoother to drive with that new 1.6 litre turbocharged engine. It's quieter, more refined, and Kia has also added a whole bunch more sound deadening in the door cards, in the wheel arches and in the A-pillars as well to make the Seltos a more serene and quieted experience, and it's worked. It's also a quicker car to drive as well, with 16 extra kilowatts of power, bringing total outputs up to 146 kilowatts and 265 newton meters for this all-wheel drive 1.6 litre turbo model. That means it's a tenth faster to 100 k's an hour at 8.4 seconds, and it's almost half a second faster in the 80 to 120 maneuver, which translates to real-world overtaking speed that is much more respectable than the car it replaces. And of course, we've got that 8-speed torque converter automatic, which, although in some ways could be seen as a step backwards from before in terms of technological marvel, it is a just more conventional and easier to use gearbox. You get none of that weird rolling back that you used to get in car parks from the 7-speed DCT that could be driven around by using a cheeky bit of left foot brake, but honestly, for the masses and for the people who are going to be buying a car like the Kia Seltos, having this 8-speed automatic is just an easier thing to get your head wrapped around. Fuel consumption has also improved by 1/10. It's down to 7.4 litres per 100 Ks in the combined ADR cycle for this 1.6 litre turbocharged car. And yeah, as I said at the top, it's just a better, more refined experience. We've also spent time in the 2 litre multi-point injection, which carries over unchanged with its CVT transmission. That produces 110 kilowatts of power and 180 newton meters of torque. And although that was arguably the pick of the range before, because the old 1.6 perhaps wasn't quite as good as this one, it is now not quite the pick of the range, but I can still see why you'd go for that 2 litre engine. It's simple, pretty refined, and all of that extra sound deadening that Kia's put into the 1.6 engine cars, they've also put into the 2 litre cars. So it's refined as well, and surprisingly punchy around town. It's got quite a sharp throttle response, that 2 litre multi-point injected car, which makes it feel a little bit faster than perhaps it really is. Now, talking of throttle response, that brings me on to the drive modes in this car that are available. You've got this little twiddler down here, this little knob that you can swap between Eco, Normal and Sport. I found Normal to be pretty good for most driving. I do kind of wish Kia had implemented the Smart mode that we see in some of their other products, like the Sportage and also the Sorento in the new Seltos, but Sport does a great job as well when you need to move on a little bit more quickly. It's also got a conventional gear shifter with up and down pattern for manual selection rather than that slightly awkward rotary shift knob that we've seen in a lot of top spec Kias of late. And I happen to prefer a physical stick, to be honest. It just makes a little bit more sense and it's a little bit easier to get your head wrapped around. Now we've got the engines and drivetrains out of the way, let's move on to the handling of the Seltos, which has always been good. It's got a full Australian ride and handling tune that was carried out by Kia's local engineers. Graham Gambold is the man, and typically Kia does like to make their cars a little bit firmer than some competitors, and you may have just heard that back then on a little bit of scabby asphalt there, that the GT line can be a little bit firm over the worst imperfections. It's definitely not as plush and cosseting as a Toyota Corolla Cross, but it's not bad by any means. It's not firm in the way that a Mazda CX-30 is. This car breathes with the road and it strikes a really nice balance by having a good amount of cornering support and talent when you're on a good twisty road like we were just back there, to being nice and relaxed when you're on an open country road like this. Now, I will say the GT line's 235 45 series 18-inch Kumo HS51 tyres can sometimes pick up the occasional sharp-edged hit around town and transmit that into the cabin, but the Sport Plus's much beefier 215 55 series tyres, which are the same brand and style, cushion that a little bit better, meaning that for me, I think I'd probably be going for the Sport Plus because it gets all the safety features, you get to choose from either drivetrain, and it saves you about $6,000. So again, I come back to that being perhaps the sweet spot in the range, even though this GT line does sprinkle a little bit of extra nice stuff on top. Now let's come back to safety, because I did mention that just then, speaking about the Sport Plus, because Kia has re-engineered the safety suite of the Seltos. Now, before I get into the really good stuff about the Kia's safety suite, I'm going to talk about something that really bugs me in this vehicle, and that's the intelligent speed limit assist, which defaults to on every time you turn the car on. And unlike the lane keep assist, which is a handy, helpful feature that's actually really easy to disable by just pressing this button on the steering wheel, to turn off the speed limit assist, you have to go to the menu, to settings, vehicle settings, then go into the speed limit, and then you can turn it off. And if you don't do that, it beeps at you when you go over the speed limit. Now, I guess that's probably quite a good thing, but it would be great if you could set the threshold to just give you 3 to 5 k's an hour of extra leeway. And also, it's not that great, this system, when it comes to traffic sign recognition and being able to tell when a school zone is active or inactive. So you might be in a 60 zone right now, but it's picked up a 40 zone sign and it's going to beep at you until you slow down. And that's just kind of annoying in my book, but you can let me know what you think of that in the comment section down below, because the rest of the safety suite is actually really good. You get blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alerts standard across the range. And then as you move up to the Sport, you get adaptive cruise control thrown in. You also get things like forward AEB with junction, pedestrian, and cyclist assist, and reverse AEB. So the Kia Seltos is really well equipped for the safety technology. It's just that that one little bugbear is very, very annoying. It'll be interesting to see how Peter Anderson, whose car this is going to become a long-termer, deals with that over his period of living with his car for the next couple of months. So stay tuned to the Wheels website to check out any of that future content. The new Seltos is more handsome, has a more refined engine, and just drives that little bit better. Having connected services thrown in for 7 years is also a great feature, especially when Toyota's only including it on the Toyota Corolla Cross for 1 year plus a subscription yearly after that. Makes this car look like really good value, and for that reason, I really think the Seltos should be on your shortlist if you're looking at a new small SUV. The only thing this car is really missing is a little smattering of soft touch plastics inside and the option of a hybrid powertrain. But it sounds like none of those things are going to happen, and even without those, it is a really solid, practical choice in this segment. But of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts about the Seltos in the comments section down below. While you're there, why not hit subscribe to Wheels over here on YouTube and follow us on all our channels, the website and socials, so you never miss any of our updates or content. And as always, thank you very much for watching.